bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oh, yeah. Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Tuesday, July 26th. 209 days into the new year, 157 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planets. I'm your so humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Yeah. Tonight we have a very special guest, fresh from another trip to Egypt. John Anthony West is here. And tomorrow night, that's right, Robert Schoch is back with us. He was with Jaws over in Egypt. We're going to go back to back. We're going to do Egypt tonight. We're going to do megaliths with Schoch tomorrow night. Thursday is another Fader night with John Rappaport. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is Fade to Black. JChurch Radio, Jimmy Church Radio. You'll find it. Go and do it. Follow, like, and subscribe. You can also email throughout the show tonight, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. If you want to jump into the sandbox with us in Twitter, hashtag F2B is the sandbox. We don't bite. Come and hang out with us. Any questions or comments during the show tonight for myself, for Jaws, hashtag F2BQ will get that done. All right. I'd like to welcome our newest sponsor here to Fade to Black. That is CCC Publishing. And right now they've got a special going on this month for all of the Fadernauts. Just go and click on the banners right now at JimmyChurchRadio.com, CCC Publishing or Future Esoteric. You will see those banners. $12.97 will get you the newest edition right now of Future Esoteric, and they will also send you another free book. Just use the promo code Jimmy. Go and get it done. It is a great book. Brad Olson is one of the very best. Also, Life Change Tea. Use the promo code Jimmy when you order online or over the phone, and you will get free shipping from Life Change Tea and getthetea.com. All you've got to do is click on the banner, go over to the special page for Life Change Tea. Great specials, everything there for the Fadernauts. Also, Studio Dome. All of our sponsors support the show by supporting our sponsors. That's what you do. And the Studio Dome TWS True Stereo Bluetooth technology, that package, $129, 2 speakers, power cables, hard shell case, $129. The list price is $399. And use the promo code JCRTWS. You get the whole thing out the door, $129 and free shipping. The Awareness Life Expo. Have you guys checked out the new website for Awareness Life Expo? Go check it out right now. Click on the banner over on the right-hand side where it says Future Appearances. Awareness Life Expo is right there. Click. It's coming up. It will be August 12th, 13th, and 14th at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Sacramento, California. And that Friday night, August 12th, we will be broadcasting Fade to Black live from the special VIP mixer at the Crowne Plaza Hotel. You want to go do it, come hang out with us. Richard Dolan, Lori McDonald, Victor Camacho, Patty Greer, Holly Cook, Len Kasten, Chad Meek, Brett Lauder. Go. It's going to be great. Also, where was I going with that? I was going to, I'm going to host a Fade to Black UFO panel on Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. You're not going to want to miss that, too. Come and hang out with all of us. Let's get this show cracking. Busy day with birthdays today. Happy birthday to Mick Jagger, 73. Kevin Spacey is 57 today. Kate Beckinsale today is 43. Helen Mirren, one of the absolute best, is 71 today. Queen stickman Roger Taylor is 67 today. Actor Jeremy Piven today is 51. And Jason Statham today is 49. It makes you wonder what was going on around the world 9 months ago, right? What is up with July 26th? And it tops off with this. Our dead guy's birthday today is Stanley Kubrick. 1928 to 1999, died at the age of 70. And I want to light up Twitter right now. We're going to do this really quick. Best Stanley Kubrick movie. And before you jump on, obviously, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I'm with you there. That is the best science fiction film of all time. Could be the greatest film of all time. Right up there. I mean, you've got The Godfather. You've got Godfather 2, 2001, the greatest film of all time. But when you look at Stanley's body of work, and it's not large, it's just what he got done. You have The Shining, A Clockwork Orange, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About and Love the Bomb, Full Metal Jacket, Barry Lyndon, one of the best shot films of all time, Spartacus, and the demented film Lolita. Think about that. Kubrick began active work on AI, artificial intelligence, the Spielberg film, but it was a Kubrick project. But he died. He had a fatal heart attack in his sleep on March 7th, 1999. And after Kubrick's death, Steven Spielberg revealed that the two of them were friends and that they frequently communicated discreetly about the art of filmmaking. Both had a large degree of mutual respect for each other's work, and AI was frequently discussed. And then Kubrick said, "Hey, Spielberg, come here. Hey, Steve, come here. I think you should direct it. I think you should do this film. It's more of your type of project." And based on that relationship, Spielberg took over as the film's director and completed the last Kubrick project. And AI is a great film. It's a great film. And it's got one of the saddest beginnings ever, when the kid is dropped off in the woods, remember? And it goes through. It's just amazing. But the ending and the way that the alien life forms have, come to Earth is frozen now. And the way that they look and their craft and how they travel, all of that is pretty cool. So it's just a great story, but the ending to me is one of the best in cinema. So there you go. On this day in history, 1947, folks, Truman signs the National Security Act. Right? July 26, 1947, just a couple of short weeks right after Roswell. Yeah. Fader fact. Research shows that just thinking about a plan B can make it less likely that you'll ever achieve plan A. And that's a Fader fact. So get your plan A and get it done. Forget about plan B. Forget about thinking about plan B and go get her done. Tonight, very special guest. Yes, that's right. Fresh off the plane from Egypt, John Anthony West is here. Tomorrow night, Robert Schoch is going to be here. And then Thursday night, another Fader night with John Rappaport. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. And there you go. Man, was that a strange phone call last night at the end of the show? You guys remember that? The Area 51 caller call? Oh, man. Talked about that all day today. That was absolutely bizarre. And now, got a couple of things I want to get into tonight before I bring John on. And one of them is, you know, what the world is talking about right now, which is Pokemon Go. But I got something a little different for you here, because as of today, it has officially now gone into 26 more countries. Right? And now security and religious authorities around the world are starting to flip out. And they're going public. In Saudi Arabia, clerics renewed an existing fatwa against Pokemon, calling it un-Islamic. In Bosnia has warned players to avoid chasing the creatures onto landmines that were left over from the 1990s. An Egyptian communications official said today that the game should be banned because sharing photos or videos of security sites could put those sites at risk. Russian officials have now sounded similar warnings, saying that the consequences would be irreversible if Pokemon players continued unchecked. Now, right now, players are walking into places that they might not normally have a reason to be, pointing their smartphone cameras at buildings, secure areas, military and historical sites. And according to the download, it says Pokemon can be found in every corner of the earth. And that's what it says when you download the game. And that is precisely the problem. Hamdi Bakit, a member of Egypt's Defense and National Security Committee in Parliament, says, and I'm quoting here, Pokemon Go is the latest tool to be used by spy agencies in the intel war, a cunning, despicable app that tries to infiltrate our communities in the most innocent way under the pretext of entertainment, end quote. And he's spot on the money. Russian websites are now publishing articles claiming the game is a CIA plot. Well, which it is. We know that now. The Kremlin's press secretary has warned users not to visit the Kremlin looking for Pokemon. A Cossack leader in Russia says that, and I'm quoting here, it smacks of Satanism, and there is talk of prison time for anyone found looking for Pokemon in church. Kuwait banned the app's use at government sites, and officials warned it could put users' personal data at risk or be used by criminals to lure victims to isolated places. We've heard lots of stories about this. Crazy stuff. Kidnapping, children, parks, craziness, predators. Indonesian officials also called it a national security threat that could allow its enemies to penetrate military sites and gain access to top-secret data. On Monday night, a French citizen working in Indonesia was temporarily detained after stumbling onto the grounds of a military base in the West Java province. We've heard stories about Area 51. Think about this. Israeli officials warned soldiers not to use it on bases as it would reveal their location. Such a smart, evil. South Korea's government already restricts Google Maps for security reasons, so Pokemon Go, which uses the data to populate its own maps, it won't work, right? Okay, so that's cool. But the app happens to work in one small seaside town near the North Korean border. Nobody knows why, but busloads of people are showing up from all over South Korea to play. As for me, this is where it gets and stays crazy. Seriously. Here you have a game that is developed with CIA cash, right? CIA Dash, CIA Ducks, lots of them. And it's designed to collect intelligence and personal data, locations, directly connecting itself to databases in real time throughout the world, wrapped up in a nice, cute, and innocent-looking package in total disguise, covert. And the players, they don't care at all. The warnings are everywhere. Warnings from the government and religious officials, security analysts, people from the opposite side of the conspiracy fence. Not us, not our circle, not our family. We get it. But those out there that don't look at things with the conspiracy glasses are warning everyone, and nobody cares. Nothing is stopping this massive data mining offensive. And it's crazy. It's a nearly perfect plan, folks. If you think about it, just go and use millions of ordinary players as your agents, your operatives, collecting images, video, location, the personal data of your employee of the company. He's collected everything all at once. All at once in just a few weeks. Let's stretch it out to a month or two. And then you have it all. And it's stored. And now the really big question is that nobody seems to be asking, well, not yet at least, is what will happen to all of the collected intel? Who's in control of that? A gaming company? I don't think so. Can you imagine how many images and locations are now permanently stored in a massive indexed and searchable database, which includes who took the picture, who was at that location, where they came from, how they got there, and even more freaky, where they live and what their email is. Man, it's crazy. It's insane. And even more nuts, it's all true and happening right now as I speak these words to you. Think about it. It's been one of the craziest days for me as I go and collect this information and look into this, and I'm getting fed information and I'm out there, and it's nuts. And then you combine that with the other thing, the Internet of Things, that applies also to Pokemon Go. Do we really want us right now, everybody, just right now connected to each other and then to things? Things. And when I say things, I just mean things. Pokemon Go is out there with this augmented reality, collecting cartoon characters, right? Animations. And your location and everything else that is there is connected to another database, And yeah, we're talking about cell phones and the like, but then you have computers, and then you have refrigerators. And I am talking about the thought of all of this going backwards. I'm not a doomsday guy. But right now, when you look at what Pokemon is doing and the connection and Google Earth and everything else, and how all of that is communicating with each other, then we have the disaster stories that involving the Internet of Things and Pokemon. Right now, to me, it's all the rage. Pokemon is all the rage. The Internet of Things that is part of Pokemon and cell phones and Android systems. If you stop and think about this, we have cars, both driven and driverless. We have the power grid. We have dams. We have tunnel ventilation systems. And for me, a particularly vivid and realistic one is the near future fiction published that was done last month in New York Magazine, and I read it, and it described a cyber attack on New York that involved the hacking of cars, the water system, hospitals, elevators, and the power grid. And in these stories, thousands of people die. Chaos ensues. My favorite word. While some of these scenarios do overhype the mass destruction, the individual risks are all real. You have to listen to me. The traditional computer network that I was just referring to with Pokemon Go and network security isn't prepared to deal with all of this. And somebody is a step ahead of us right now. Not only with Pokemon Go, but it's everything. You have to understand something. And I just got back from the Hope Conference and talking to people out there. And the people that I regularly interview on this show about these risks and about the singularity and about technology and where things are going. Classic information security is a triad. You have three things. You have confidentiality, you have integrity, and you have availability. And believe it or not, they call it the CIA, which admittedly to me is confusing in the context of national security or this show. But basically, the three things a hacker can do with your data are steal it, that's confidentiality, modify it, integrity, or prevent you from getting it, and that's availability. CIA. So far, internet threats have largely been about confidentiality, doxing. These can be expensive. One guesstimate is that data breaches cost an average of $3.8 million each. They can be embarrassing, as in the theft of celebrity photos from Apple's iCloud, Ashley Madison, I've talked about that enough. They can be damaging, like when North Korea stole tens of thousands of internal documents from Sony, right? Amy's emails. 83 million customers had their accounts breached at J.P. Morgan. Both of those happened in 2014. And they can affect national security. When the Office of Personal Management Data was hacked, supposedly by China. And I think that was back in 2015. I talked about it on this show. And with the Internet of Things, integrity and availability, the two other parts of the triad threats, are much worse than confidentiality threats. In my opinion, it's one of the things that your smart door lock, just listen. It's one thing if something in your house, like I just said a smart lock, a toothbrush, a refrigerator, can be eavesdropped, right? Some child monitor in a bedroom. I get that. But it's another thing entirely if it can be hacked to allow a burglar to open the door. Or how about to prevent you from going out of the door? That's much more frightening than being eavesdropped and spied on. A hacker who can deny you control of your car or take over control is much more dangerous to me than somebody looking at me in my car with a camera. Right? With the advent of the Internet of Things and cyber physical systems in general, we've given the Internet hands and feet, the ability to directly affect the physical world. Listen to me. What used to be attacks against data and information have become attacks against flesh, steel, concrete, or your food. Think about it. A simple hack into every smart refrigerator in the country that will shut them all down permanently at the same time, that is dangerous. Or every smart television in the country shut off all at the same time. How about both being shut off at the same time? It's one thing to hack into a bank, Wall Street, or Congress. Most people don't care. Or today, it would barely make the news. But you take away somebody's Haagen-Dazs, frozen pizza, or Seinfeld reruns, and you're certainly going to have anarchy in the streets. And if you do it at the same time, the world comes to a standstill. Guaranteed. Sure, I get it. Today's threats include hackers crashing airplanes by hacking into computer networks, remotely disabling cars, either when they're turned off or parked or when they're speeding down the highway. But what about electronic voting machines? How about frozen water pipes through hacked thermostats? How about remote murder through hacked medical devices? I was talking to somebody about that this weekend at Hope. The possibilities are pretty and literally endless. The Internet of Things will allow for attacks we can't even imagine on a super, ultra large scale that you cannot wrap your mind around. You can't see hacked ones and zeros, hard data. It doesn't bother you. But this kind of disaster, your refrigerators and your phones and your cars and your TVs, you're going to be able to see this, feel this, and touch this. Me personally, me thinks the Internet of Things is just a really bad idea, and it's a gimmick. It's another tool to sell you more things that you just don't need. You'll probably never, ever need, but they got to sell more stuff. A recent Princeton survey found that there were 500,000 insecure devices on the Internet, and that's nothing. That's of today. That number is about to explode. We're going to have millions at the end of the year. Already, we've seen Gmail accounts that have been compromised through vulnerabilities in Samsung smart refrigerators. I've reported on that. Hospital IT networks compromised through vulnerabilities in medical devices. I've talked about that. And you remember when I brought up Target? Target was hacked through a vulnerability in its air conditioning system. The only way to prevent anything from happening is to stop the Internet of Things. Right now, full reverse, pump the brakes. But that can't and won't happen, ever. We've gone way too far down the road. We cannot turn the car around. And things will get a lot worse before they get better, if they ever get better. I don't know what the first crazy attack will be. I don't. But it will happen. And when it does, then you get the copycats. And then the next thing you know, it's going to be a weekly thing that is out of control. Right now, if you have a problem with your smartphone or computer, you know what you do? You get another one. You throw it away. They're pretty much designed to last a couple of years at most. But your refrigerator, TV, your car, your house, the water supply, these are things that are designed to last for 5, 10, 15 years. You just don't go and trade them in. And updating and changing and the systems and what they're running on. They're running on ancient Android. The Internet of Things and the things that go with it are about to get very, very scary. My advice, don't do smart anything. Disconnect. If you need to have your lights on when you get home, and I get that, get an old-fashioned radio remote control and click it from your driveway when you pull up. As a matter of fact, that was pretty high-tech about 5 years ago. Think about it. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, John Anthony West. This is truly bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. I'll be right back with John Anthony West. Stay there.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously. Give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444.
Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
Hi, folks. Ronnie here reminding you that June is Health Awareness Month, sponsored by GetTheTea.com. Many of you have heard our tea commercial, maybe visited the website, but haven't committed because, well, you just don't know. Skeptical. We understand. Just to remind you, our tea is not just tea. In fact, very little tea. Life Change Tea is a unique blend of 8 different herbs, removing intruders that attack your health. You brew our tea to make the concentrate, you add water, and put in the fridge. 2 8-ounce glasses a day, and life will be good. Visit us at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. And this month is lots of fun stuff with Health Awareness Month. You could be picked and receive your order absolutely free. You never know. Read the testimonies and try our products. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. And for great health tips, visit my YouTube channel at Health Matters Now, where you can learn about health tips and how products work on your body. Join me, GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fade-or-Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want to remind everybody, we have John Anthony Weston here tonight. Tomorrow night, Robert Schoch is going to be here. They both just got back from Egypt, and we have 2 great conversations dead ahead. And Thursday night will be Fader Night, open lines all night long, and John Rappaport will be in here with his No More Fake newsroom. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. Let's get straight to John Anthony West. He is a writer, he's a scholar, he's a Pythagorean, born in New York City. He is the author of The Traveler's Key to Ancient Egypt and a consulting editor for the Traveler's Key series. His previous book, Serpent in the Sky, High Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, is an exhaustive study of the revolutionary Egyptological work of the French mathematician R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz. Now, Jaws won an Emmy for his 1993 NBC special documentary, The Mystery of the Sphinx. That was, of course, hosted by Charlton Heston. His video series, one of my favorite things to watch of all time, Magical Egypt, a Symbolist Tour, is a must-see for anyone interested in Egypt, the pyramids, art, or sculpture, but also lost history and civilizations. 4 days ago, he got back from another trip to Egypt, and he's with us tonight to discuss the latest news, what he saw over there, all things Egypt, and we've got a couple of other things we're going to cover tonight, and we're calling this an evening of Egypt, generally speaking, with the one and only John Anthony West. John, welcome back to Fade to Black.
Thank you, Jimmy.
What is cracking, young man? You just did another trip. You did another trip, and I want to start off here, John, if you don't mind. What's it like over there now with the tourism industry and the culture? Have things settled down a little bit, and what was that like?
Well, you can't say that they've settled down because they never felt unsettled. This is the weird thing. I mean, this applies anywhere in the world. These days, this was not one of my normal trips of, taking people over there to see the sights and explaining Symbolist Egypt. This was a research trip, and funny thing, we've got all of this time, but both I and Schoch are under whatever you call it when you sign a non-disclosure statement or something. So I really can't talk about any of the details of what we were doing, but we were there basically on a recce looking at things that we want to go into as soon as possible in much greater depth, because there's a ton of evidence sitting out there that both Schoch and I have developed over the course of the last 20 years, but we've never had either the money or the ability to put together a research program that would get passed by the authorities, because to do any kind of actual scientific, and in this case it's geological and geophysical, in order to be able to get a legit program off the ground, you need all sorts of bureaucratic things. You need sponsorship from a university, which we didn't have. You need, obviously, money. You need permissions to do this and permissions to do that and permission to go to the bathroom and permission to bring your own toilet paper. I mean, you need a permission for everything. Gone are the days when all you needed was money and courage, and you go over there and plunder at will, send all the stuff home and sell it and live happily ever after.
Right.
It's now this bureaucratic process. So we were mostly looking into what we hoped to do. In other words, we were not doing the science work itself, because this is a long process and you have to get permission for everything and all this kind of stuff. So we weren't even trying to do that. We were just looking to put together a program of what we actually wanted to do. And in the process, it was a complicated process that, as I said, I'm not at liberty.
Well, I won't push you into the corner and get you to disclose stuff that you can't.
Well, I'll wiggle out anyway.
Yeah, but I'll try. But let me. Did you get the work done? Are you happy with the trip?
We got enough done. We got enough done so that the trip was, I would say that it was a success, not necessarily what we'd hoped to get done. But the main thing is that we got to meet the new minister of antiquities, which is a cabinet position there. It's what Zahi used to be,
right?
The minister. And Zahi, as you may or may not know, I get on with on a personal level, but he's still as stubborn as ever, and not the least bit open to further research or our stuff or anything like that.
That's right.
And the new guy is, he's got all of his letters, all of the correct letters after his name in place, but he seems very civil and very open, and as long as the rules are followed, we got the very strong impression that as long as the rules are followed, he will be open to giving us the green light to get the work done. And to that extent, we now know, which we didn't know before, this is really complicated, what you had to do in order to satisfy the authorities that you were legit and that you'd be able to get your further work done. So, but everything seems to be falling into place in a sense that Schoch now has the support of Boston University. It doesn't mean that they're going to put 5 cents into it, but that's okay. We don't need that. See, up to now, he's not had their support.
Right.
Because, who knows why. They considered him dangerous. And the archaeology department at BU has been virulently opposed to Schoch. I mean, they were trying to get him fired and stuff like that. But obviously he's persisted, and now the newest regime in place recognizes that this is important stuff, and perhaps more important as far as the university is concerned, it's great promotion, and that Schoch is in fact a valuable asset. So the university is now fully supportive of what we're going to do. So this means this is the first hurdle, because you can't just go and dig anywhere that you like, no matter how much money you have.
That's
if
right.
You have a lot of money. You have to satisfy all of the conditions and requirements. And we now think that we should be able to do that, and also, with a bit of luck, be able to put the finance together that allows us to do that. And we, I mean, much of the stuff we were looking at while we were there was not even, it wasn't even new discoveries, but rather it was looking a bit deeper into things that we've been talking about, Schoch and myself, for 20 years, but could never get actually free access and permission to go and really look at it. Things that, very deep caves and things of that sort, that require, equipment to get down into them and look at them and things of that nature. So now we think, once we get the permission, once we fill out, dot all the I's and cross all the T's and do all the stuff that we have to do, that we get permission to do this, we then put together, we then put together the science to, we think, once and for all, put, the final evidence. We shouldn't have needed it for 20 years. The evidence that the geological evidence for the water weathering of the Sphinx should have been enough to make this next 25 years of frustration unnecessary. But nevertheless, we had to go through this. But now we think that once we get this permission, once we get this work done, that's the end of it. The quackademics will, the ivory tower will be imploded from within, sort of like the Trade Center. We won't need sort of people streaming out of the hills of Afghanistan with blowtorch, with box cutters.
Yes,
to bring it down.
Yes,
it will come down by being exploded from within. And we will set the charges.
Well, I'm going to tell you something interesting about you and Schoch's influence in Egypt, and I think you probably don't know. Well, let me explain this. I just got back from New York City, and my driver out there was from Cairo.
Oh, right. All cab drivers.
Yeah, no. This is my limo driver. Okay.
Oh, limo driver.
So,
they're in limos. Right.
So we spend a lot of time with him, and this is one of the things that he said, and it blew my mind. Now, he was an archaeology student, okay, at the university there in Cairo.
Really?
Yep. He said that he's read over 500 books on archaeology and Egypt history. This is
really?
Quoting from him. But then he said this, and we were not talking about you and Schoch. We were talking about Zahi and the culture out there, and now that Zahi's gone us over. And this is what he said, and he only said what he said because of you and Schoch. Now, this is your influence. He goes, look, the way that they look at Giza now and the pyramids and the Sphinx is that history is wrong. It's not 2500 BC. Everything is much older there, and we're starting to accept that now. That is what we're dealing with there, and hopefully with the new Ministry of Culture and Antiquities and the way that things are going out there now, we're going to start to look at things differently than we were in the past, and that Zahi was so hard set on the way things were written and not changing it and moving forward as if everything was fact is now totally different. He said, I just got back from Egypt 2 weeks ago. I took my son out there and I took him around, and that is what's going on. And that's when I said to him, I said, sounds like you've been, reading John Anthony West and Robert Schoch. And he said, John Anthony West, the guy from here in New York. And I said, yes, right? And and he goes, but that's what we're dealing with out there now in Cairo. So how does that make you feel? Because, you and Robert have been instrumental in all of this for 2.5 decades now.
Yes.
And it's a long road. But how does that make you feel to have a limo driver, a random guy, speak about it like that in these terms, born and raised in Cairo?
Yeah, very good. Obviously, I hope he finds a better job than driving a limo, though that's not as bad as some.
He's happy. We talked about that. He's happy. He's happy. He's a happy guy.
Yeah. Well, listen, driving a limo in New York is better than driving a limo in Cairo. If you've ever been in Cairo, you wouldn't want to drive a wheelbarrow in Cairo. So he's doing well, but that is interesting, actually, Jimmy. That it's percolating down to that level. We have that sense of it too, that we're right on the cusp of it now, and it's frustrating, or it's been frustrating all of these years, knowing that we have the evidence already, more than enough evidence to prove the case once and for all. And of course, we couldn't get past the combination of the forces of progress and all the rest of what is entailed to breaking the paradigm. Fortunately, for me, I didn't expect anything else from the establishment. I mean, I know enough from my own dealings with establishments not to expect anything reasonable or intelligent.
Well, I mean, now it's your
fair.
Right. And at your age, John, I mean, do you even care anymore? I mean, you know that it's almost a battle you're not going to win. You just might as well stay on your path, and you guys keep doing what you're doing.
Oh no, we'll win this one, and at my age, I still reckon I've got a bit of time left, so it'll happen well within my lifetime. I'll bet within a couple of years, because the way that ideas change. I mean, Max Planck is famous for his I'll quote. I think I quoted almost exactly correctly that new ideas never supplant old ideas because of the quality of the evidence. What happens is that the old guard dies out, and new people, young people who've grown up with the idea and are not challenged by it, take over. Words almost to that effect. I mean, it's almost an exact quote. Well, this is true, but it opens up a whole field of inquiry into, you might say, the philosophy of science and the psychology of scholars and things of that nature that interest me a lot. And I mean, I've been aware of this for a very, very long time. And some of my colleagues who are working in the same field and have evidence as good as ours in their own branch of the overriding inquiry get frustrated by all of this stuff, all of this obduracy and actually stupidity that we get from the quackademic community. And me, no. I know enough to understand that this is absolutely inevitable. And secondly, I know from my long association with the Gurdjieff work that, in fact, there's you might call it a philosophical and moral imperative to deal with this in an intelligent rather than a simply knee-jerk way, and that is, to put it into a nutshell, I'm sort of paraphrasing Gurdjieff, whoever and whatever presses your buttons is your master, period. It doesn't mean if you're right or wrong. If your buttons get pressed, you lose. That's all there is to it.
Yeah,
no argument about that.
No, there is no argument about that. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
So, all of these people who are talking about they're being outraged because somebody is calling them a bad name, they don't realize it, but you shouldn't call people bad names and things of that nature, but people do that all the time. And if you react to it, you're the victim. You're an idiot. If you react to some jackass calling you,
an idiot. Let's be kind.
A politically incorrect term.
Yes.
I mean, you lose as long as people call you that by that name and you react. They're going to keep calling you by that term, and you could deserve it because you're stupid enough to react. Anyway, it's a lesson. One of the lessons. Lots of lessons I haven't learned. But that's one lesson I have learned. So I don't mind when I'm confronted by all of this stupidity. The only thing I mind, actually, is that, well, two things I mind. One is they prevented us from from all of this time, from doing a lot more work and establishing the new ideas, and being able to carry them further, because for a variety of reasons, which I hope, get into over the course of this, this interview. Trouble with me is that I'm so long-winded that I take up all of the time, and then there's no time for getting in some of the other things.
You can take all the time you want, John.
but anyway, we should be much further along in this quest in terms of the nature of the evidence. But as you know, over the last couple of years, the evidence has been piling up, not just from us, some of it from us, but Göbekli Tepe is the smoking gun. There is no arguing once you got Göbekli Tepe. And it's not really a smoking gun. We got an arsenal of smoking guns now. And this was one of the things we were looking into when we were over there, into doing the further work to establish those other smoking guns. But there are now a whole bunch of them. I'm sure Schoch will talk about some of those tomorrow. I'll stick more or less to Egypt in this one and actually get into some of the implications. I mean, some of what's involved, because the evidence is one thing, and the ability to get the evidence recognized is quite another thing. In fact, has almost nothing to do with the quality of the evidence. And back to Max Planck and his observation that the old guard dies out and the new one takes over. Well, even that is a pretty slow process. For us, it's also a slow process in terms of, look, I developed on that single line by Schwaller de Lubitsch that the Great Sphinx is weathered by water and not by wind and sand. I read that when I was doing my research for The Serpent in the Sky, my first book on Egypt. That must have been early 70s. And I recognized what Schwaller didn't realize himself. I'm sure he didn't, or he would have made much more, he would have paid much more attention to it himself. He didn't realize that was the scientific key to establishing, call it the TLC, the lost civilization.
Right.
And he didn't recognize it, I don't think. He wrote that book, The King of the Pharaonic Theocracy, toward the end of his life. He only lived about a year after that. But I'm sure he didn't recognize himself what dynamite that was. But I did when I was doing my own research, and did my own research and established the whole Sphinx theory, or developed the whole Sphinx theory. But I'm not a geologist, so I couldn't put it into scientific terms. I did a pretty good job. I only made a couple of major mistakes, or not even one major mistake. But that's not bad. But a new theory developed by an outsider, and anyway, that's 1978 or 79. The Serpent came out, and now what is it? It's almost 30 years of nonstop bucking the opposition, listening to all of their stupid abuse, and in my case, not reacting to it, but rather, again, as Mr. Gurdjieff used to say, and it's my screensaver, use everything. So,
well, this is the thing, though, with not only Schwaller, but you and Schoch, but everybody else. When you lay your eyes aren't going to lie to you, and you lay your eyes on the Sphinx. And all of those Egyptologists have the same eyes and brain that we all have.
Oh, no, they don't.
Well, you know what I'm saying. You know what I know. You know what I'm implying, though. Your eyes aren't going to deceive you. And when you look, the evidence is, you can pull in a Schoch and a geologist, but your eyes are telling you one thing. Schwaller said that, made that observation. You did too. And they all see it, but you have half that group that is in denial about it, even though they can look and see what Schwaller and you and Schoch are referring to directly. And that's the thing that just boggles my mind. It's just that they're in denial about it. And that's fascinating.
Well, it is fascinating, but they won't and they can't. It's psychological. It has nothing to do with their intelligence, which is a very high level to begin with.
Right.
But back again to this whole idea of what it takes to change the paradigm, which actually interests me personally. maybe even more than the science and the scholarship itself. I love the battle, actually, and the other guys don't, mostly. Schoch doesn't particularly enjoy the battle. He understands what's involved, but he doesn't actually enjoy the abuse and the difficulty, and I do in my own way. Anyhow, again, I hope I get to talk about this a bit later. The book that I sent you, that I edited, I spent most of the last year and a half, 2 years even, editing and sort of co-writing. I'm not quite a co-writer, but I'm more than an editor on the book, on David Solomon's book, The Dead Saints Chronicles. And in the afterward, because I know we talked about it, you interviewed David shortly before he passed away.
Yes.
But that's another idea, the near-death experience, that of course is being, furiously opposed by the forces of so-called rationalism, materialism, atheism, etc., etc., etc. And I wrote an afterword. I don't know if you actually read the whole book. An afterword to that, where I talk about exactly this question of changing the paradigm, and it's a sort of a long, an extended riff on the famous line by Victor Hugo. Everybody knows this line. Not everyone necessarily knows that it's Victor Hugo, the famous French poet of the 19th century, which is that there's one thing stronger than all the armies in the world, and that is an idea whose time has come.
That's right.
What Victor Hugo, it's a good line, actually, and it is true in its own way. It is true. But what Victor Hugo didn't say or didn't recognize, I'm more inclined to think he didn't actually follow his own thought to its conclusion, which is the second strongest thing in the world is an idea whose time has not yet gone. And since, in effect, de facto and in effect, in the world that we live in, all of the armies in the world, be they scientific or military or agricultural or artistic or economic, whatever the subject is, the armies of the world, sometimes they're academics, sometimes they're actually armies, they're military, but generally speaking, the armies of the world are elements of, what's the word I'm looking for? What is it? They are committed to defending the idea whose time has not yet gone. And this is where the battle comes in. And this is where, when you have no idea how many people, both on the trips that I lead to Egypt and at lectures that I do extensively and, a jillion radio programs, everyone says, sort of mirrors what you said, how can they not pay attention? How can they not see that this is, well, they can't, because for psychological reasons, their souls, such as they have, they don't really have souls. Souls have to be developed. But their egos, which are sort of surrogate souls, are entirely bound up in their role as experts. I mean, as a scholar and a scientist, as a general rule, it's not a very glamorous job, and there's not much money involved, and you don't. It's not as though you're Lady Gaga or somebody important like that. Nobody knows who these guys are for the most part, except within their field. So their sense of self-esteem is rooted in their role of experts.
Well, let me jump in right there. I got to take a quick break. We'll finish that thought on the backside, and also when we come back, Jaws, exactly what we're talking about, like with Zahi and Göbekli Tepe and his denial that he even knew about it. Right? Let's follow up on all of these thoughts right after this. Our guest, John Anthony West. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay right there. It's going to be one of those nights, everybody. Let's do this.
How many minutes?
2.
Okay.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Fadernauts. Things are never what they seem. For the past century, forbidden subjects such as UFOs, backward engineering, human abductions, secret space programs, underground bases, suppressed free energy devices, and other fantastic notions have tested the human mind, forcing it to decipher fact from fiction. Chronicling what he calls the alternative narrative, author Brad Olson gets down to the middle of it all in his best-selling book, Future Esoteric, now released in a second edition by CCC Publishing. And now, you can get Future Esoteric at a special price, plus another free book by just using the promo code Jimmy when you check out. Just click on the Future Esoteric or CCC Publishing banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hard shell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, the one and only John Anthony West, is here. Yeah, man. It's going to be one of those nights. I got the feeling that Jaws is about to let loose, as only he can. And, John, I'm watching the reaction with everybody in Twitter. They're like, come on, bring it, Jaws. Let's go.
Oh, really? Okay.
They love
good.
you, man. This audience
How
loves you.
How vulgar can I get?
No. Well, actually, I will post what you sent me earlier when we get to that.
Yes.
But we have to do that after the kids go to sleep, okay? But we'll post that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, but brilliant, I might add. But that's the teaser, everybody.
Okay.
So I kind of want to do this. I know that we were talking about Zahi right before the break, and the and the quackademics and their inability to listen and believe their eyes, right? But rather than dwell on that, I want to pick your brain. I want to go into a couple of spots that you and I over the years haven't necessarily gone into, questions I've always wanted to ask. And as you know, I just got back from the Met and got back from New York City and got a nice little refresher course in all things Egypt and went through the West Wing of the building. Now, is this. And looking at all of the artifacts and all of the stuff that they have there, I just walked away with the one thought that I can't escape from, and that is Egypt, and going back to when Upper and Lower joined, and the first dynasties and the first kingdom. If you go back to that period, it appears to me that instead of an evolutionary process that was in play that would have taken tens of thousands of years, that they just popped up totally upright and walking, man. You know what I mean? They started from the word go, with all of this excellence and knowledge of the stars and mathematics and language and religion and culture and it just, they were propped up and ready to go. They were a fully upright, functional civilization without anything to come before it. I'm going to ask you directly, Joss, how is that possible? What is your idea? How did this happen?
Well, there's more that came before it than you think. and assuming that our Sphinx theory is correct, and that the most spectacular sculpture on the face of the earth and the temples associated with it, built of these gigantic blocks of stone half the size of your room, date from an almost unimaginable period, 10,000 BC, but maybe much, much older, until we get over there. And this is one of the big plans, with a panel of geologists and the freedom to go where we want and test what we want, and maybe even get samples possibly, that will be able to put dates on these things. But it's quite clear that very advanced societies existed in the very, very distant past, and here in intellectual Dumbfuckistan, you've got basically uncreative people. This is a thing that is not generally understood. Scientists are mostly not creative people. They're very intelligent and capable of manipulating data, but they've never written a sonnet and they've never written a play. They couldn't write an advertising jingle, which is not so easy, by the way, if anyone paid them to do it. And the same applies to academics. And so these people are looking at the artifacts, the artistic, but also scientific artifacts left from the very, very different past, through eyes that have no capacity, through minds and hearts that have no capacity to understand these things. In fact, if their emotional centers were even a little bit open, they'd be walking around in awe of these fantastic places that they're supposedly studying and writing learned papers on. And when you read the papers, if you can read them, I mean, apart from the jargon that, is natural to virtually any specialized discipline, mostly the jargon to a certain extent serves some purpose sometimes. Mostly it's a way of protecting their own paradigm so that nobody can dare challenge them. I mean, that's not a conscious thought on their part, but it's an underlying principle. So these wonders that have been left to us are being studied by the people who are least capable of actually appreciating them. When I go on my Egypt trips, and these are pilgrimages, people come out of them. The idea of the trips, apart from paying my mortgage, the idea of the trips is to introduce people to what a real civilization was like when there was a real civilization. What we have is shiny barbarism, and it keeps getting worse. With each technological advance, it seems to get even stupider in its own way.
Right.
But anyway, So these incredible feats of old go either the mysteries are not acknowledged or they're explained away in the stupidest way possible. So on the trips, at the end of 2 weeks, you really understand what an actual civilization was like. And once you realize that it really was a civilization, and you step back, you realize that with our upbringing and our so-called education, we're incapable of actually understanding it, but we can, if we're a little bit open, stand in awe of it, and from that point of view, start coming to some sort of an understanding of what's involved. That's Schwaller's, in fact, wonderful work, which is unfortunately not very penetrable, like many great minds, or many of the greatest minds. Schwaller was not a great communicator. To him, things that were sort of obvious, are incomprehensible to people a couple of rungs down the ladder. And My Serpent in the Sky actually is a good introduction to Schwaller, and it's no walk in the park either in its own right. It's not bedtime reading, but people, it is at least accessible because I'm a writer by trade, not a scholar. And so I can make things sound, I can use the language in such a way that things are accessible. But anyway, that's what we're confronted by. And in fact, that's what's so important about Egypt and about all of the other very ancient civilizations that are now coming to light. It's now quite clear that this was a global civilization that went down under catastrophic circumstances. That's sort of Schoch's department, and I'm sure he'll be talking about that at length tomorrow. But it should have been clear to them long ago. For example, you're familiar with the Paleolithic caves, right?
Absolutely.
Chauvet and Lascaux and all that. Well, these are artistically, these are works of absolute consummate genius. The fact that somehow they managed to do these paintings Picasso learned how to paint the bull from the bulls at Lascaux. These are magnificent works of art, daubed on by fingers in the dark somehow or another. And this is, now we're not even talking Sphinx age. Well, we might, because the Sphinx might be that old.
Yeah, it could be, right.
But this is twice as old. These are twice as old as Göbekli Tepe, which the academics, date at 10,000 BC and older, because what they've uncovered now, almost certainly, it's the bottom ring or the bottom layer of these 22 or 24 stone circles that they know are there from ground penetrating radar and whatever else they used to uncover them. So the chances are, this is guesswork. I don't know this, but my guess would be that they start building on the top of the hill, not at the bottom, and then they keep building toward the bottom. So that then Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who was rarely, for archaeologists, a pretty open sort of guy, he was quite open, willing to say. In fact, he was the first one to say it, that they were uncovering that what they had already uncovered and worked on for all of these years, which is only 5 of these stone circles, and they're not even completely excavated. So God knows how long it's going to take to continue the work. But that chances were that what they were uncovering was the latest stage, and that as they went up the hill, it would get still earlier. So now you're talking about whatever it is, but what they have now, dating around 10,000 BC. The caves, Lascaux, and this is, I think, pretty solid, stratigraphically dated by the layers of whatever they've excavated around there. Lascaux and Altamira, I think, are the 2 major caves that I think they date around 17,000 or so BC. Well, that's almost twice as old as Göbekli Tepe. And then the best of the caves, that's the one at Chauvet. Oh, it's called Chauvet. It's not that Chauvet. It's the name of the guy who discovered it. But it's also down there in the south of France in the Dordogne. That they date at 31,000 BC, and they're arguing about that because some of the archaeologists involved think it's still older. But these are the most magnificent of all of the paintings. So what you're looking at are masterpieces of painting, and the people who are studying them, can't draw a stick figure themselves. So they're in no position to judge the magnificence of this fabulous art. And once you actually recognize how amazing the art is, suddenly you have to rethink the whole thing about hunter-gatherers and everything that you've ever been taught about really old civilization. They might have been hunter-gatherers because only an imbecile would go to all the work of planting when all you have to do is go outside your fur-covered yurt or whatever it is that they're living in,
right,
and shoot an arrow into whatever happens to be walking by, and you've got food for a month. So why or you go to the nearest tree that's growing something or another that's edible and climb up the tree and pick it. And then you can spend the rest of the time singing and dancing and enjoying yourself and painting the interiors of caves. So even the whole idea of hunter-gatherers as lesser beings than ourselves has to be completely rethought. Can you imagine a hunter-gatherer, a Göbekli, or a Chauvet painter looking at imbeciles taking crowded subways to get to work in Wall Street or some other god-awful inhuman place to work all day long to make a bunch of money that most of it goes in taxes and the rest of it goes in stupidity? I mean, they would not call this progress.
No, and when you look at Lascaux, and there is a connection to Göbekli Tepe, certainly in that thinking. Well, first off, 3D artwork like that, like you have at Göbekli Tepe, right, and like you have at Lascaux, like you said, those aren't stick figures. This is coming from. This is a 3D fine art. This is the real deal. And you look at that and you think of the depictions of Stone Age man at the Field Museum in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
some guy standing there in a leopard skin I don't know, pelt, right? And with a club in his hand, right? No, that is not what's going on here. This is high intelligence. This is the real deal. And when you look at that, even as a kid, you look at that and what they're trying to tell you who painted that, it doesn't add up, and you're not buying into it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, I mean, we were not learning about. Of course, they didn't even know about Göbekli Tepe, but we weren't learning about the Paleolithic caves either, where I went to school. So that didn't come until later.
Now, I want to stay on the same thing. I want to pick your brain here on a couple of things. With all of the research that I have spent my life on, nothing like you, but I study Egypt. It's one of my favorite things to do. But there's one thing that doesn't add up to me, John, which is when you have things like Abydos and you have Memphis and you have Luxor and you have Karnak and, of course, the Giza Plateau and 100 pyramids and all of this stuff that supposedly went on through this period, I have to wonder about the population and how many people were actually involved and the amount of tools and the amount of work and the amount of quarrying and everything else, because everybody focuses, and especially the Egyptologists, they want to focus on the Great Pyramid and 2.5 million blocks in 20 years. Right. Well, if that's the case, and you go and you multiply that about across Egypt in all of these older kingdoms, and how all of that got done and that kind of high technology, it doesn't make sense to me or anybody else anymore. We're not buying that dogma. There must have been a large population and a much older one, and it wasn't. Well, how it doesn't make sense. Okay, now so there's that issue. There's that, and then when you look at 2.5 million stones on the Great Pyramid, that we've been force-fed, and that concept of 20 years. Right next to it is a pyramid that's just a few feet shorter, right? Well, what about that 2.5 million rocks? And what about that? How did that get done? And then right behind it is another pyramid. So where are all of those tools? Where it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't, and it's got to change.
Well, for it to change, it has to change into something, and this is quite right. I mean, a number of people have calculated in the supposed 20 years that it took Khufu to build the Great Pyramid, in order to do that from scratch, starting with nothing, they would have to be putting in place a stone every 60 seconds or something like that.
Right.
Well, this is next to inconceivable. And of course, how they did it in the first place, this is also completely unknown. How they got the stones up that high. They have all of these ramps and all of these different theories, but none of those theories really hold up. There's recently been a theory, and I mean, believe me, no week goes by without somebody coming up with a new theory, because it all comes across my desk or across Schoch's desk. We hear about all of these things. Most of it is just nonsense, but some of it isn't. Some of it is thought out and all the rest. And there was one recently, I forget where I saw it. It was a fairly substantial documentary. I think it was on television, not just on YouTube. But anyway, it was some engineer figuring that the blocks with the temples, where they were talking, he wasn't talking about the pyramid. He was talking about the temples of Egypt. And that, we were talking about the pyramid, and that the amount of quarrying, the rubble that would have been left by quarrying out these 2.5 million blocks, the rubble would have been this gigantic mound of rubble, and he thinks that they used it as fill. In other words, that the pyramid, if you really could X-ray it, would show a kind of an outer shell or several layers of rocks, and then inside there would be a rubble interior that would just be fill, which they in fact did do in the pylons of the temples. And I mean, I think medieval castles have that as well. I mean, you make this big thick wall, but it's not dressed solid masonry all the way through. The interior is just stones piled up on each other in no particular way, rubble. And then the walls are built around it in such a way that they're...
Yeah, I saw this documentary.
You saw that, right?
Yes, I did.
Well, that didn't seem stupid to me. It seemed pretty reasonable, except, and now I forget, I took notes, but there was something about it that made it sound almost impossible to do. He was just talking about the Great Pyramid, but it didn't seem possible to have the Grand Gallery worked into such a scheme. And the way the various chambers were situated made it look, at least to my eye, as though it couldn't be that. But anyway, that's something you could test pretty easily with radar. And they now have this program of they're scanning the pyramid, looking for other chambers and things of that nature. And actually, this is one of the reasons that we have, that we really hope that we'll be able to do the work that we want to do, because it's clear to the minister, which is a cabinet position, it's like being sort of Secretary of State, except you're doing interesting stuff instead of stupid stuff, that they're really, concerned about bringing tourists back to Egypt and basically PR. And they know that anything having to do with, new things in the pyramid, even we didn't get the conversation going around to this specifically, but they know perfectly well that the work that we're doing is, in principle, actually probably more so than finding anything in the pyramid, is a real draw for the world at large. Lots of people anyway, are fascinated by Egypt. And so all of this new things that would have been impossible under the old regime are now they're maybe going to be looking into and studying. So even an idea which is, put forward by an engineer who's not just anybody, he's a guy with a certain kind of expertise, they could look into this and test it and see if it's valid or not. I forget. I took down some notes and I don't remember.
The video that you're talking about, it's called Dassault, the company that builds the French jets, right? The Dassault Mirage. If you look up Dassault pyramid, then that video will pop up, and it was a video that was done by the Dassault Corporation and their engineers. And it's a fascinating video, and it's an interesting idea. And it's possible. I totally agree with you. Use some sort of ground penetrating radar, the Egypt project that they're doing now, and just see if it's filled with rubble and that they've surrounded it with these stones. But I'll touch upon something else. When we talk about this 20-year concept, why that gets thrown out the window. There was a clay quarry in France, for clay. That it was an inverted hole in the ground that if you took the Great Pyramid and flipped it upside down, it would fit inside this quarry, right?
Yeah.
Dimension-wise. And they went and filled this quarry with rocks to fill it out and level it out after they were done with the clay, okay?
Yeah.
It took them 12 years with trucks filling it full of garbage, right? It took 12 years to fill it up with trucks. Now, that just throws this whole 20-year concept of building, that's without any engineering or anything. It's just garbage, right? And
I agree,
and it took them 12 years, a nonstop, 24 hours a day, filling this thing up with garbage.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And there's one other thing, and I'm gonna head to a break. But this is something else that I have pondered. If we just did something simple, and we calculated 1 copper chisel per stone that weighed 1 pound. Okay, so you have 2.5 million blocks, right?
Right.
And so you have 2.5 million copper chisels. So, right? Okay, 1 copper chisel per block. We know that that's not the case. It's more. But if you did that, then somewhere on the Giza Plateau is 12,000 tons of copper. Somewhere now, and then now I took it another step, Jaws.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have 2.5 million blocks, right? That means 2.5 million meals that that somebody ate for the energy to put those blocks into place. And again, it's more than that. But let's just say there's 2.5 million tons of fish heads somewhere, right? of food, of garbage. Where is all of that? Where is the 2.5 million things that you can keep on going with, right? Then you have another pyramid right behind it. So now you have another 12,000 tons of copper, and then you've got another pyramid behind that one.
Yeah, you should have a lot of copper floating around somewhere. This is a very good point, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And then the fish heads actually, like Mark Lehner did a study of his workers' village,
right,
behind the pyramid somewhere. Down by the horse stables there, and concluded that the Egyptians ate fish. And I have a lot of money. For this, he gets financed.
Right.
Egyptians ate fish.
Well, that shows you what you and I need to do to go get some financing. We'll talk some fish heads right here. Let's take a break.
Okay.
Our guest tonight, John Anthony West. We're talking all things Egypt. Nothing like a conversation with Jaws. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRAradio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis
soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's all here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm tweeting out. Go to J Church Radio, at J Church Radio on Twitter. I just tweeted out these images of this sarcophagus. It's absolutely insane.
Ah, right.
Yeah. And for everybody, just go to, you can just look at some interesting pictures while Jaws and I are talking tonight. If you go over to jimmychurchradio.com and click on the gallery right there with John Anthony West, click on the gallery. We posted over 100 high-res images that we took of the exhibit on ancient Egypt over at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, one of the grandest places on the face of the earth. And anyway, there's one thing, and also if you go to row 7 of that gallery, there's a picture of some of the tools that they allegedly used, right? And go look at that picture and check that out. It's pretty fascinating. So there was one thing that blew my mind that, well, it all does, but is this. When we're talking about limestone, I get it. You might be able to hack through that with a copper chisel working all day long. Certainly you're not going to cut and place a stone in a minute and a half, like they say. But, okay, you might be able to get it done with a lot of sweat. But when you're dealing with red granite, and now we're at, or diorite, now we're at a whole nother level of technology. And, these stone hammers and copper chisels, it defies belief. You really have to have a leap in faith to go there. But is this, John, They had a sarcophagus there. I didn't tell you about this. They had another one that was from 2200 BC. And it's a basic square sarcophagus. It had a round end on it. The lid, this thing was probably 6 feet tall. It was lying on its back. 6 feet tall, 6 feet deep, 15 feet long, right? With the lid that was probably 1.5 feet thick.
Right.
And this black, dark gray granite. And you go up and touch this. Of course, they yelled at me, but I'm feeling it. Yeah, don't touch it. And I'm looking at this. I'm thinking to myself, how did this is granite, and it's 2200 BC.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around how this was done. And on the inside of it, you go and you look in, and there's hieroglyphics all over, these 4-foot walls, beautifully cut, sharp edges, unbelievable artwork. Yeah. And then you're backing off, and you're thinking, okay, what, chicken bones? This was copper chisels? No, it would take 1,000 years to do that. It would just have to. It would never even get finished. And so I have to ask you, John, what's the explanation for that? I mean, the copper chisels out the window, and stone tools to do that intricate carving of the hieroglyphics on the inside.
It doesn't seem possible. They say that the copper chisels were hardened or tempered with arsenic somehow or another. I'm not sure how that's done, but even so, it's still copper chisels. It's not diamonds or anything of the sort. There's another thought that through abrasion using, carborundum, very hard sand, they could kind of sand them into shape. But that almost seems unimaginable too. It all seems unimaginable, and the sarcophagus that you're talking about is even small compared to the sarcophaguses that they had for the sacred bulls, where the whole thing weighs about the box is 60 tons and the cover is 40 tons or something of the sort. And, they're wrestling these things around as if they're building blocks. No, I agree with you. I don't know, and nobody knows. And what's irritating is that what's frustrating is that they almost never will say, we don't know. It's the thing in the world. Actually, there was an interesting society. I was a member for years, and I just dropped it because you can't do everything, called the Society for Scientific Exploration, that was begun by an interesting guy called Robert Schoch, who was the Dean Emeritus of the Princeton University Aerospace Facility. So, this is not a unicorn, or a hippie dreamer or something like that. This is a pretty solid guy. And it wasn't begun by him, actually. He was president while I was a member. And they would look into all of these outside the box ideas. I mean, reincarnation, UFOs, et cetera, aliens. They were willing to look at absolutely anything, but from strictly scientific paradigms. And John's sort of second in command there was a woman called Brenda Dunn. And she had a good line. She said there are two posters that every scientist should have hanging up in his laboratory or his office. One that says, I was wrong. And another one that said, what is that? I don't know. Yeah, these are two things you virtually never hear from a scientist or a scholarly academic. Almost never will they actually say I was wrong, even when it's obvious that they're wrong. They might say, well, this demands more study. That's their way out of it. But yeah, all of these things that you're bringing up and many, many more are total mysteries. How they did it, why they did it. What the hell are they doing? I mean, they're not tombs. The later pyramids are maybe tombs, but the pyramids of Giza and Dashur and probably Saqqara, maybe Saqqara, I'm not sure of that. But all of those are not tombs, and they're all different from each other. And some of the most spectacular stuff, until you've been there, you don't even realize how it is. The Bent Pyramid, so-called Bent Pyramid, which is south of Giza, and is thought to be older than the Great Pyramid and the Giza complex. The casing stones of that are put together in such a way that they're keyed into place with the kind of tolerances that we use on a Ferrari nowadays, and why they should be done that way or how they should be done that way. And then after that, you don't see anything else built that way. This is a giant mystery, and on the trips, this is one of the many mysteries of Egypt that nobody pays attention to. On most trips, you don't even get to see the two pyramids of Dashur, and if you do, you go, they take people whistling by without ever pointing out this miracle of architecture. And when I have architects on my trip, in particular architects and engineers, they look at these things and they're just dumbfounded. They're professionals. They're used to doing engineering feats and architectural feats, and they look at these things and they're just gobsmacked. They have nothing to say, no suggestions, no ideas how they could possibly have put these things into place. You get the sense when you're there that somehow or another it was easy for them.
Yeah, you do. And when you look at, I love Karnak. Yeah. And you look at Karnak and Luxor too, to the same degree for the same reasons. But you look at Karnak and you look at, over 100 columns that are 30 feet tall. Absolutely huge. And the thought that there was a roof over this thing at one point too is mind-boggling. Some of these, I think there's like a dozen of the pillars that are 30 meters tall and 10 foot at the base.
And more than that, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the central columns. Yes.
Right. And you look at that, and it had to have been easy. No matter what, it wasn't difficult, because then they wouldn't have done it. And you look at it in those terms, it had they were onto something. This wasn't levers and sand ramps and mud ramps. No, there's something else going on here that it was easy for them to do. I'm assuming that they did all of the carving on it after it was, after they put these things together.
That part is for certain. That part's for certain. But, you have to be careful, because sometimes there are, and there are a few instances of this that I just don't have time to get into here, but sometimes they just have a genius way of applying very simple technology that has been lost, and we just don't know about it. I know of a few instances of things like that from my personal experience of watching, guys out in the field doing certain things, shoveling cement or something as banal as that they're doing in such a way that it's a quarter the amount of work that we put into it. So it may be that, at least in some instances, they have a genius way of applying very simple technology. But I've seen certain instances of it, but not anything that would explain building the pyramid in 20 years or in almost in any number of years. How they get the 70-ton blocks up to the middle of the pyramid, 100 and whatever feet in the air, 140 feet up, and put them, over the roof of the king's chamber so close that you can't get a credit card in between them, is inconceivable. And then the other question, that's the other bit that's also inconceivable, is why is it so important for them? And obviously it is.
Right. And not only that, John, and that is the one thing that we recognize when we see it. But this is the other thing, and this is how my twisted brain works. They also haven't shifted in 3,000 years. All of the earthquakes and everything else that, you know what I mean? That it is still in place the way that they built it then. And that is something that the Egyptologist won't bring up. An engineer, if you take him in there, you know, some construction guy that builds skyscrapers, that's the first thing he's going to say is, holy crap, this thing is earthquake proof. You know,
just about, actually. But Egypt is very tectonically, I think that's the right word, stable. Earthquakes are really rare, and big ones rarer still. But there have been a few, and they have taken down certain things, but other things that they should have taken down, they didn't. And early on, the academics were sort of sneering at the Egyptians, saying, well, they didn't know how to, you know, put a column in place, because the columns are sort of on shifting sand. What they do now in Japan, that the foundation is not, the foundation moves when the earth moves, the foundation moves with it. So various structures, columns and things like that, manage to stay up when the earth moves. Whereas if it's rigid, they don't, then they come down. And I think recently they've gotten to understand that the Egyptians really did know what they were doing in that regard.
Exactly. So then we have to back up. And if that is the case, which it is, then where did the intelligence come from to, A, have the knowledge of having to build and level a limestone foundation underneath the pyramid that would support the pyramid? You have to level it. You have to point for their own reasons, pointed this thing to exact magnetic north without any laser technology that we know of, you know, things that we would need to use today. And why was it so important to them, like you said, to do all of these things? I got to tell you, John, the house that you live in right now, if you told your construction guy, hey, you know what? I want this foundation to be absolutely dead nuts level, and it's got to point to exact magnetic north. He's going to look at you like you're nuts, because he's going to say, why? Why put that kind of effort in? But at 2500 BC, we're expected to just go with that. They just were able to do it. Well, they were able to do it. You're not giving a Stone Age man enough credit. They dealt with rocks. They knew what they were doing. You know, I don't buy that anymore. It just doesn't make any sense.
I never did in the first place. But then comes the other question of why are they doing it? Because it's obviously very important to them to have these structures that really don't require precision tuning. You know, it's not as though they're building a watch. Maybe they are in their own way, but why this obsession with these incredible tolerances that you don't see how they get in the first place? I mean, abrasion, they can't get that bit. They can't do with copper chisels. They've got to do it somehow or another. And this is when the early guys were going in there, Flinders Petrie and the rest of them in the 1870s and 1880s. And they started, they recognized that the wonders of technology that they were looking at. And this is at a time when, Victorian technology is not bad. It's not drones and, and super colliders and all of that sort of thing. But it's still pretty advanced. And then they're looking at stone that's cut to the precision of what in their day, Flinders said, these are tolerances we use in optics, not in masonry.
Yeah, right.
And that's them talking.
Right.
Yeah, it's a huge mystery, and will remain a huge mystery, but maybe not permanently, because as I've mentioned on a couple of occasions, it looks as though the paradigm, the ivory tower is unstable, and it may not be long before it crashes to the ground. And people with certain kinds of expertise are able to look at these things and have free access to them and get a dialogue going, maybe to figure out not just how they did it, which would be wonderful, but also why they did it, because it's very important to them to somehow or another tune themselves to the cosmic cycles. And I'm quite sure of this one, even though it's not had a lot of press. But when they're doing all of these festivals, I'm talking about Luxor now, because they had, festivals that went from one temple to another, and then from the second temple to across the river to one of the other temples, and then up to Hatshepsut's temple, and then back over to Karnak again. And each of these, what they're doing, I'm ballparking it because I can't be too precise about it, and it's not my field anyhow of expertise, but effectively what they're doing is that they're having these great celebrations on their holidays. I mean, they don't have stupid holidays like us, like President's Day. Who gives a goddamn about President's Day or Armistice Day or, Secretary Week or this kind of junk Independence Day, all of the nonsense that motivates our fake holidays. They tuned to solstices and equinoxes, and what they were doing in their festivals were they were doing effectively reenactments. Instead of stupidly reenacting the Civil War or whatever it is that we do, they're actually reenacting the stages of cosmogenesis. They're participating in the formation and the maintenance of the universe itself. And whether the guys participating in the ceremony knew that, probably they didn't. They were just celebrating. It was great fun. And there are lots of celebrations and great feasts and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But they're living. This is why it lasts for 3,000 years. It doesn't last for 3,000 years if they're not doing something pretty damn right. And so they're geniuses, and where they acquired this knowledge, because you brought it up earlier, and I didn't address it. But I think it's probably a mistake to assume that this took thousands of years to develop. Creativity, for anybody who's creative, and I mean, I am to begin with. I mean, I'm a writer to begin with and a satirist and so on. I'm a scholar by default. But ideas come out of the blue, and it's quite quick to take them to fruition. So these kinds of ideas, this kind of cosmic sensitivity that these people have, not necessarily take thousands of years to develop. Not necessarily. And we think, well, we're such geniuses, Watt invents the steam engine, and now everybody's driving around in a Ferrari that drives itself even sometime soon or another. That's only a couple of 100 years. And we think that we're the only ones who develop things quickly. But maybe they developed things just as quickly, except they were different things.
Yeah, and again, I hear you, except the principle between Watt and the steam engine, and certainly the development that turned into not only locomotives but Mercedes and what happened in 1890. I get that, but those were all based on ideas that came from before. I mean, the steam engine didn't just pop up overnight. The Greeks were building steam engines in 400 BC. So for theatrical performances.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
right.
So that was a long development, and the ideas came from before. But where you have ancient Egypt in play, now we're trying to digest the thought of all of this magic from all of the different directions all happened at the same time. And guys were sitting around and ideas were popping into their heads. That's a possibility. No, I think that everything is taught. just going back to Göbekli Tepe. There's that gap of 7,000 years between Egypt and Göbekli Tepe, and that the knowledge of Göbekli Tepe came from before. How to carve, and you're taught that, and it just continues to go backwards and backwards and backwards in time. So I think, and I'm convinced, that civilization goes back so far, and knowledge has been developed, and handed down for tens and tens of thousands of years, and that's where we need to apply science today. Is where did it come from? Let's open up our minds again and try to figure this out. And I know that's exactly what you're saying. So, and that's where I'm at today with it. There's one other thing though, John. When we're looking at, we're not looking at singular events. We're not looking at just Atabas, or we're not looking at Memphis. There are 27, 28, 29 pyramids that the Egyptologists want us to digest that were built in a 200-year period. It wasn't just it wasn't Khufu, Khafre. It just wasn't just that. You have Saqqara, you have Dashur, and where this pyramid building era from 2600 BC to 2400 BC, where they just were in constant production of quarrying and building these monstrosities, these beautiful structures. When you look at the Bent Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, it's not just about the Great Pyramid, and that's
that's right.
Yeah, people don't understand about how much construction was going on, and then you throw in Luxor, and then you throw in Karnak, then you throw in the dam north of Memphis, and you throw in these other spots around Egypt where all of this was going on at the same time, in the same time period. It blows the mind. It boggles the mind. It's impossible.
It does. You haven't been there, though, have you, Jimmy?
No. The closest I've been is the Dendura Temple at the Metropolitan.
Yeah, they make this big fuss about that. I mean, it's
pretty cool, though. It's pretty cool.
It's Roman. It's hopelessly corrupt. I mean, that would have been considered a garage.
It would have been a garage. Yeah, it would have been somebody's back porch.
Egypt.
Yeah,
someplace where you,
no doubt.
You'd put your garden hose equipment and stuff. And they make this big fuss about it.
But it's beautiful. It's intricate. And
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you go and you stand next to it, and all I can think of is chicken bones. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, you got to get to Egypt one way.
I can't wait, and you're going to be my tour guide. Let's take a break right here.
Okay.
Jaws, another fascinating conversation. You're the absolute best. This is
I want to
Black.
talk about a couple of things when we come
we'll
back.
do it. It's your show. I'm just here to talk on the microphone. Our guest tonight is John Anthony West. This is Fade to Black. More with Jaws right after this.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Are you tired of brown rust stains on your toilets, sinks, and clothes? Does your water smell and taste bad? Don't live with these problems anymore. Hydrocare's revolutionary well water systems, available at Wave Home Solutions, gives you clean, healthy, great-tasting water from every faucet. They remove iron, hydrogen sulfide, sediment, and many other contaminants that are distasteful and damaging your fixtures. You'll be amazed how fresh and clean well water can be. Satisfaction guaranteed. Go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Fate or not, things are never what they seem. For the past century, forbidden subjects such as UFOs, backward engineering, human abductions, secret space programs, underground bases, suppressed free energy devices, and other fantastic notions have tested the human mind, forcing it to decipher fact from fiction. Chronicling what he calls the alternative narrative, author Brad Olson gets down to the middle of it all in his best-selling book, Future Esoteric, now released in a second edition by CCC Publishing. And now, you can get Future Esoteric at a special price, plus another free book by just using the promo code Jimmy when you check out. Just click on the Future Esoteric or CCC Publishing banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Go Beckley Teppy. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Teppy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Our guest tonight, John Anthony West. Oh, yeah. All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to post John's little picture that he sent to me today. Of
both of them, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do both. Well, we did the. I'm not going to say what it is for everybody, but we did the Five Horsemen the last time you were on the show. So we'll do that
we
too.
Did, the Five Cowboys.
But we didn't do the map of the United States, even though you let it slip earlier. So we'll do that now. But before we get to that, Jaws, and we can do this really briefly, but I got a bunch of tweets here that want to ask you pretty much the same thing. We're talking about this intelligence and where it possibly came from, but everybody wants to know what your thoughts are about ET and that possible influence. Briefly, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the UFO phenomenon is very definitely real, and it's pretty well established. But what is not necessarily real, because there is zero evidence for it. I mean, it's very easy to say, well, we couldn't build the pyramids and we couldn't carve the Sphinx, so it must have been ETs. No. Why must it have been ETs? Why can't it just be, not when I say just, why can't it be human beings with much greater capacities than ourselves who did that? So my sense of the ETs is it's a kind of galactic Darwinism. We can't do it, so maybe the aliens did it. But if the aliens did it, how'd they get so smart? So if I saw some evidence that said, well, yes, the ETs are really responsible for it here, but that kind of negative evidence, arguing by, we couldn't do it, so therefore it must be these beings from outer space, that that to me does not seem like much of an argument. I'm much more inclined to think that it's beings like ourselves, but who have much greater capacities, just like somebody who plays the violin would be incomprehensible to somebody who's never listened to music or never touched an instrument.
Sure.
It would look impossible.
Sure.
So the same thing applies to Egypt and all of these other fantastic things from the past. Even things like the shamans of the rainforest discover, or you might say invent, ayahuasca, which comes from two plants that grow in different parts of the rainforest that are completely undistinguished looking, and somehow or another, they figure out, or they know, actually, they tap into the spirit of the plants, which most of us can't do. I certainly can't. And they know that one plant provides the psychotropic substance, but is a poison if you just took it straight, and the body would reject it instantly, and the other fixes it so that you can go through this amazing experience. But just mixing them, just putting them together isn't enough. They have to be mixed together and boiled through a rather complicated series of stages to get to the finished product. Well, this is impossible.
Yes.
And when you multiply that by all kinds of stuff from the past, you see that people had, even on certain simple levels, capacities that we have lost. I mean, we could maybe regain them, but we don't have them. And so extrapolating from that, I'm perfectly happy with. And in fact, sometimes you see accounts by yogis and lamas or people who've studied with the yogis and lamas of superhuman feats that the masters have done that are absolutely beyond the possibilities or even the imaginations of me or you or other people who haven't gone through the same discipline. I'm perfectly happy with that kind of an explanation. There's one, it's weird, it's a strange, ill-written book. I did that Contact in the Desert thing a couple of times. And the guy who founded that, have you been at that one? Yeah, of course you were.
Yeah, I've been there with you.
I did a thing with you.
Yes.
And the strange guy that put that together, Dingle, was his name? John Edwin Dingle, I think, who wrote the little book called My Life in Tibet that they have in the bookstore there. And he talks about his studies in Tibet. And at the very end of his studies, he was witness to the lamas doing these physically impossible things. And in fact, one of the things important to me was he describes going into an underground cave or an underground chamber that was all lit up, but there was nothing lighting it. And, nothing physical, no electric lights, no lamps burning. It was just lit somehow. And to me, I said, aha, because it didn't exactly explain. But one of the mysteries of Egypt, one of the innumerable mysteries, is how the devil did they light these deep tombs, these deep caverns that go around corners and all the rest of it. They couldn't have done it with candles because it would use up all the air and it would get smoke all over the ceilings. And they couldn't do it with mirrors curving around. They didn't have those kinds of silvered mirrors. So how did they do it? And I used to laugh and say, oh, well, they did it with inner light. And then when I read the Dingle's account of these structures, these underground caverns, I guess they were, in Tibet, man-made, in other words, not caves, all lit by some magical kind of light. And I saw no reason to disbelieve him. I mean, who am I to disbelieve him? And I thought, gee, that maybe explains it. And then what I was putting forward as a joke, maybe it wasn't a joke. They did it because they could access the light.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that they had at the Met, where they had these panels from Tutmosis III, his tomb, right? And they had the false door, and the panels are half finished. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the upper half is drawings, and then the lower part, they started to finish, and the bottom is painted in relief and done. And you're looking, and so how the artist, you have to, it's one thing to understand the concept of carving. Okay, yes, in relief, that is, but you still have to draw it perfectly. And you could see parts were erased, right? And it was like somebody came in and said, you know what, that's pretty good. You can do it better. Erase that and redraw it. And you could see it. That's
you
that's,
can see that.
Yes. And that's what's impressive. You're not doing that by candlelight. You're not doing that off the sun reflecting off of copper chisels bending corners, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not. I don't know how they did it, but I can tell you what they didn't do, and they didn't do it by candlelight. You would go blind, and there it is. It's obvious, and it's just incredible to see it develop, from the drawing to relief to paint. It's pretty cool. So now, but what about Atlantis? Do you discount that theory that Egypt were the survivors of Atlantis?
Well, it depends how you regard Atlantis. In other words, Plato's account, well, to boil it down, the Plato's, what I think is that Plato got the story, as he says, from his grandfather Solon, the lawgiver, and the Solon got it from an ancient Egyptian priest. But he then goes into, Plato does this long description, very intricate, of the X number of canals and this many soldiers and that many things of battles and so on. I mean, it's incredibly complex. I mean, all the numbers are put together. Well, how did Solon remember all that stuff to pass on to Plato, and why should he talk about it? And there was a very interesting book, complicated, very interesting book written called The Pythagorean Plato by a scholar who's a Sufi and a musicologist named Ernest G. McLean, spelled M-C-C-L-A-I-N. And it was published about the same time I published The Serpent in the Sky. And I read it, and it seemed absolutely cogent to me. And then my book was already in print. And then subsequently, I knew about it, but I just forgot to add it when I did subsequent appendices to the book. Because I think between the two of us, we're really right on the mark. And I knew from... We had mutual acquaintances who said, McLean isn't the least bit interested in your geology theory. And I think that was before I got together with Schoch, even somewhere in the 80s. So I never bothered to try to contact him. But he decodes that myth as a musical allegory designed by Plato for his own students, who are all musically initiated and musically savvy, to illustrate how, through the laws of harmony itself, how a high civilization run by a philosopher king, which is Plato's ideal, which is sort of like a pharaoh without calling him pharaoh, how that descends through the laws of harmony into chaos and tyranny. And I mean, for example, is this, and if you suddenly think about it, you realize that why are all those numbers there? This doesn't make sense. And McLean really puts it together in a way that I think is more or less unchallengeable, and that anybody who's Atlantis hunting, and there are lots of people out there, I get things across my desk all the time, is that anybody who's seriously Atlantis hunting owes it to themselves to read McLean's book, which is, you can get it. It's not, it's not it's not at the checkout counter of the supermarket, but it is gettable, because if you're going to look for the physical Atlantis, you have to first be able to find faults with McLean's allegory. And I'm convinced, and as I said, I'd heard that he wasn't interested in the geology, and then but to me, the geology is the geology, and there's no getting away from it. And in fact, they're not antithetical, because I think that there was a highly developed and sophisticated civilization, but that was global. And I mean, Laird Scranton's work pretty much demonstrates that, and so the work of a number of other people.
Yes.
And then it goes down under cataclysmic circumstances, and Schoch, I'm sure, will be talking about that because he's really into how and when that civilization went down. But enough survived so that there were survivors all over the place. They didn't have to go from a non-existent Atlantis around the globe to get to wherever they had to go. They were there to begin with, probably. And even if they had to get from one place to another, when you see the so-called solar boat of Khufu, this is the best ship up to the clipper ships. That ship could go anywhere, so there's no problem about getting across the Atlantic or the Pacific if you know how to navigate and things of that nature. But you don't even need that if there's a global civilization that gets toasted in one gigantic CME, what is it, coronal mass
blast.
Ejection.
Yes.
And so there's no problem with that. You don't need a physical Atlantis because all of the Atlantis hunters are always looking for something physical and saying let's say there are 50 different factors of, I'm just inventing a figure, representative of Atlantis. And so they find 14 features that correspond to Plato's account, but there are 36 others that don't fit into Plato's account, but they forget about those. And therefore, you've got people thinking that Atlantis is the Altiplano of Bolivia, and others who think it's off the coast of Spain, and somebody else who thinks it's Tunisia or Algeria, and somebody else who thinks it's in the Mediterranean. And I think all of that is wild goose chasing, and that the answer is simple enough, and it's no less glamorous.
Yeah, there's even talk now of the South China Sea,
Yeah,
as well.
That's all of this stuff.
Right.
And Plato's description is very specific, so anybody who wants to prove that it's here or that it's there can't fudge and cherry pick the pieces of evidence. Either it is more or less. I mean, you can make mistakes and things like that, but it really has to substantiate Plato's physical account. And if you're impressed by McLean's analysis, which I am, it obviates the necessity to look for a physical Atlantis. You have the lesson in front of you of how a civilization degenerates, which is a very interesting lesson, actually, because that's exactly what we're in the middle of now.
Do you think that we will find a vast cache of knowledge and documented stuff? Not only what Edgar Casey referred to, but you do have the Library of Alexandria, and there was a collection of stuff that was central. Do you think that there is something more to find, that they will open something up and there is going to be a library and descriptions of where they got their knowledge from?
Maybe, yeah. They're discovering stuff all the time. Could be. And maybe it's not. Papyrus is relatively new, in the long distance scheme of things. Well, I just found this new papyrus recently that's Old Kingdom, around Khufu's time, that talks about the workers working on the pyramid. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the pyramid. We think, Schoch and myself, that the Great Pyramid and the Giza Plateau, the Khafra Pyramid, it's easy to prove that it's built in at least two separate stages. And we think that applies to the Great Pyramid too, but the evidence is more shadowy. But if we get a chance to get in there and look at some of the things that we want to look at, get access to them, we might be able to come up with some answers as to the stages of construction.
Are we ever going to see from you and Schoch? I don't know if you would work on this together, but are we ever going to see a calendar? And what I mean by that is this: when we hear these dates, 2600 BC, 2500 BC, there isn't a hard calendar that dates to these years. You know, we have the Greek and Roman calendars that go back, 400 BC, 600 BC, 700 BC. But before that, everything is open to interpretation. But
yes and no, Jimmy. There's some pretty solid stuff in Egypt. They've been arguing about it for a long time, but they've kind of refined it. Now they've got the Syriac, the Sirius calendar, this cycle of 1461 years,
right?
And they have the regnal years of the king. So, I mean, what from around 2500 BC or so, I think it's pretty accurate. And then down to 3200, there are gaps and things like that, but it's fundamentally probably okay. And then before that, then it starts getting very shadowy. Schroller thought, because of the Sirius calendar, that you could really date Egypt by the Heliacal rising of Sirius back to 4240 BC. I forget exactly his reasoning for that. And Schroller he's not God either. He makes mistakes.
Right.
But it seemed to me there was reason to believe that. And even though it's called the pre-dynastic and proto-dynastic and things like that, which is all pretty fragmentary, this was an interesting thing. Too bad you weren't at the Met last year. How was it? But there was an exhibit called The Origins of Egyptian Art, and they had all of this pre-dynastic and proto-dynastic material that they curated from around the world. And usually pre-dynastic, proto-dynastic, in any big museum is just a little shelf full of stuff, not really that much.
Right.
But if you go and collect it all, you get a pretty big collection of many of really amazing things. Turtles, tortoises, and crocodiles, and hippopotamuses, and lots of the images that would subsequently become the embodiments of cosmic principles, the gods themselves, and created and executed in very hard stones with absolutely magnificent precision. This is at a time when there's not supposed to be any civilization. So this stuff going on earlier. There's Nabta Playa, which, if Tom Brophy is even half correct, enshrines all kinds of very interesting, complex astronomical knowledge. So as they go along, and there are other things as well, the little things that pop up, a bracelet that was found not long ago, a year or two, in Turkey, that they dated, I forget exactly how, but through stratigraphy, I guess, to 8000 BC. And the guys who found it remarked about how sophisticated the geometry of this bracelet was. Well, 8000 BC, and they've got geometry. That's not nothing. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, there was one other. I've got to share this with you, and then we're going to head to a break, and we didn't get to the map yet of the United States, everybody. Right. And so I promise you that we're going to spend some time on this. But I want to share this with you, John. They had 3 mummies there, 3 wives. I forget the king, but it was, or the pharaoh, but it was 2200 BC. And on all 3 of these wives, they had these gold sandals on their feet, right? So that the sandals are on display. You may have seen them, but the sandals made out of gold are the bottom part, the soles of the sandals it's paper thin gold, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful with the thong part that goes in between your big toe and your whatever, the second pig toe, whatever you call the your index toe, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And so beautiful and so perfect, and the flatness of the sole of these sandals. And they look like they were made yesterday by some artisan somewhere. And you have to stop and check yourself and say, no, this is 5,000 years old, right? This is 4,000 years old, and they are beautiful and they're perfect. and then you have to ask yourself, the chicken or the egg, what came first? The intelligence? How did this happen? You're smelting gold somewhere, you're refining it, you're shaping it, I know it's malleable. Right, I understand that it's malleable, I get that, but we're talking about Stone Age man here, and it is beautiful beyond description. And it's one thing to look at it and go, wow, this is beautiful. This is cool. And then you have to say to yourself, we're in 2016. This is 2200 BC. And it's difficult to understand how they understood metallurgy like that back then. To extract the gold, to extract the copper, to be able to melt it and understand it, and then shape it and do these intricate designs. They're incredible to look at, and I don't understand where the intelligence came from. I really don't.
That's actually, Jimmy. 2200 is the end. It's already getting degenerate. The end of the old kingdom.
Right.
They've already built the pyramids and carved these incredible statues of Khafra and things like that out of diorite and incredible hard stones. They're making gold, making perfect gold sandals with very thin soles, meaning that they weren't used for climbing up the pyramids or anything like that. They're ceremonial sandals.
Right.
But that's a piece of cake for them. They've got a highly developed infrastructure by that time, which nevertheless, however highly developed, it doesn't explain how they built the pyramids and the temples.
It doesn't.
No, not at all.
Oh, man, I just...
But that part, the goldsmithing and the jewelry and the furniture and all of these things are relatively comprehensible.
And I love Egypt so much, and I study it so much, and the thing that I still cannot, as much studying as I do and talking to you and other researchers, it just doesn't make any sense, man. It really doesn't. I'm glad that Göbekli Tepe is there, because Göbekli Tepe says to us that Egypt wasn't a singular thing. And we've always known that, right? We've always assumed that. But Göbekli Tepe is there, and it allows me to take a deep breath and go, okay, all right, now we just have to put the pieces of the puzzle together here and figure it out.
Yeah, that's right. This was the smoking gun. They were always hammering at us for years, saying, well, show me a potsherd, said Mark Lehner. And, it's all hunter-gatherers back then, blah, blah, blah. So Göbekli Tepe in one fell swoop dispels that misconception, and this is the arsenal. So now the objective is for us to use the arsenal, which we should be doing very skillfully in time coming up, if we are able to get both our funding and our permissions to carry on with the work that I was telling you about, or sort of hinting at, because I'm not supposed to be telling.
I cannot
any
wait.
Specifics.
I can. Hey, before we get to the map, do you and Schoch, when you guys sit down and talk to each other, do you guys still trip each other out, or are you guys just on the same page? What would it take for you to make Robert go, wow? Or the same thing? Does he still do that to you? Does he say things to you that just blow your mind?
No, not much, because we are on the same page. It's just that he has his expertise in fields that I go to him for, because I don't have the science behind me. I have a symbolist soul, and I can often put things together in a way that he wouldn't think of. That would not be the direction that his understanding works.
Right.
And also, I'm the satirist. He's not. So when it comes to explaining stuff.
He's got a weird combination of being pragmatic, but yet he has a very open mind too as well.
That is very rare. He's right. You bet.
It's a very rare combination. Okay, I'm going to skip this commercial break. Let's go straight into this map of the United States. What are we looking at here?
Well, I mean, I did not invent that map. Somebody, when George W. Bush stole the second election, some anonymous person, I tried to track it down, and I'm not sure, might have been something from Saturday Night Live, but I'm not sure, and published that map. But it was a bit different because they had the red states all red and the blue states all blue, and Canada was on it too, all blue. And there were two variants of this. One called the red states Dumbfuckistan, and the blue states were either the United States of Canada or America. And I realized when I saw that this was insulting in a way, and worse than insulting, it was inaccurate. And so I recalibrated the map and had a graphic friend of mine change it around so that the red states are greater Dumbfuckistan and the blue states are lesser Dumbfuckistan, but it is all Dumbfuckistan. And this is where the 5 cowboys of Apocalypse 2.0 come in, because with the best will in the world, even the good guys, the Chomskys and the Pilgers and the, what's his name, Chris Hedges, and all of these guys ultimately are almost as clueless as the idiot Trump right-wing goon-headed morons. But they're intelligent, so in a way they're worse. Because my sense of it is, and Egypt is behind this, that there is no civilization possible. None, not really, unless it is based upon an inner spiritual understanding that we as human beings are on this planet for a purpose. And the Egyptians understood this purpose perfectly well. Their entire civilization is directed to it. And it lasted for 3,500 years, which isn't bad. And that purpose is the immortality of the soul. Everything in Egypt is directed at furthering that quest. And if you don't understand that that's a reality, and these guys who I've just mentioned, Hedges and Pilger and Greg Palast and the other good guy who lives around here, Parenti, I mean, all of these lefty intellectuals actually buy into the biggest fraud that ever got perpetrated on the human race, which is not so much evolution itself. That's part of the process, but actually the notion that it all happens accidentally through what they call natural selection, which is a linguistic fraud. That fat jackass with the bearded asshole, what was his name?
Richard Dawkins.
Daniel Dennett.
Oh, yeah, Daniel Dennett.
Daniel Dennett described somewhere, scoffed at any idea of this sort of a spiritual component to the universe, and talked about natural selection. And he said it's all a series of lucky coincidences. If suddenly natural selection, see, that is a linguistic fraud. Natural, if you look up the dictionary, there are dozens of meanings for natural. None of them are synonyms for accidental or fortuitous or gratuitous. None.
You're leaving out the word luck too, as well.
No, I'm coming to luck.
Okay.
Luck is a value. Luck is a value judgment. Who says it's lucky? It's lucky for us, but maybe it's not lucky for somebody else.
Right.
It's anyway a value judgment, and a series is one thing after another. It's not a coordinated, orchestrated, three-dimensional whole. So, in other words, natural selection is a linguistic fraud. if you call evolution, forgetting for a moment that it's a fact in a certain, if you look at it in a certain way, in another way, it's not necessarily a fact, but can't get into that here. But if you look at it, that it's all come about through a series of lucky coincidences, you realize what ridiculous science the whole thing is. It's a gigantic fraud from beginning to end. And unless this is understood, and it isn't by these otherwise smart guys who don't have a spiritual atom in their souls, which they haven't developed anyhow, but they're smart, and at least they're on the right side. They're not telling women what to do with their bodies and all the rest of the idiocy that may become the law of the land if the worst happens. So anyway, this is that map, and it is Dumbfuckistan. And unless it's understood that none of it can be worked upon or improved. I mean, even if they got rid of the genetically modified organisms, even if they somehow found a way to stop the climate change, even if they stop fracking the day after tomorrow, even that stuff is not enough because as human beings, if we don't have that core understanding that we're here for a really good reason, and that reason is the development of the soul, as it were, and the knowledge that it is, at least in principle, immortal. We can't have a civilization, even at its best. I mean, they're always talking about democracy. That's the third of the five horsemen of the apocalypse. Democracy is based upon the notion that the dishwashers tell the chef, the dishwashers elect the chef and tell him what to do. Do you want to eat in such a restaurant? Not me.
Right.
I want the chef to run the restaurant. Anyway, without that understanding, I mean, you see, even in the countries that work pretty well relatively, because they're not telling everybody what to do, and they're not, bombarding everyone and murdering them all, and it's not Dumbfuckistan, Norway and Sweden and those Scandinavian countries. Compared to here, they're paradigms of civilization, paragons of civilization, but really, there's no life to them. There's no buzz to them. I've spent a fair amount of time there. It's a lot better than anything that goes on here, but make America great again. Who is he kidding?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's organized, it's cultural, it's sophisticated, yes. It's old, but it ain't fun.
It isn't fun. That's exactly right. There's no buzz to it. There's no fire underneath it. This is true. And the only way for there to be a civilization is this understanding that the Egyptians had, and in fact all of the ancients had, that we are here for a purpose, and the only way in order to realize that purpose is to work at it in specific ways. I mean, there are different ways, but specific ways. And without that, there's no civilization that is even possible. And this is why, actually, I know you did something or another with David Solomon. I mean, much of my last 2 years, in my own inefficient way, was spent working with my very good friend, David Solomon, who was collecting all of this data on near-death experiences.
One of the best shows I've ever done, by the way.
Yeah, I heard. He was good. And of course, he passed away. He was a pastor. He was a religious guy who was one of the very rare Christians who actually practiced what he preached, and he would pray that he would given enough time to finish the book, and he just got it out and passed away from this horrible brain cancer that he had. But the power of that book is that it. Perhaps more, that's a pretty extensive literature on near-death experiences, but this book is unique. One of the reasons why I agreed to help him with it was that I could see that this had, if the only thing that you read about the near-death experience was this book, you wouldn't have to read any others. Doesn't mean that the others don't have anything interesting to say, but this makes sense of the whole thing and places it in its correct philosophical and spiritual context. So what that does, see, I mean, Egypt, is here, there it is this great civilization, and you get a sense, especially when you visit it, of what a civilization is supposed to be. But the Dead Saints Chronicles, it is very moving because David is writing this thing as he's dying of brain cancer. I mean, he's a gutsy guy.
It's powerful. It's powerful.
It has a power to it.
Yes.
But what it does is that, and it's very accessible. I mean, Charlotte Lubitsch is not accessible. Gurdjieff is certainly not accessible to everyone. Even my stuff is not. The Serpent in the Sky is not bedtime reading. But the Dead Saints Chronicle, anybody can read that. I mean, practically anybody, except maybe a Southern senator or governor. But really, anybody with a working brain can read that book, and it basically establishes the reality, the spiritual reality that underlies all of those ancient civilizations. That the quackademics, especially what I call the Church of Progress, which are made up of the emotionally defective, the spiritually dyslexic, and the philosophically depraved, who still control the airwaves and the media and the New York Times and all this sort of stuff. It really stands as a living, moving antidote to that toxic materialist philosophy that we're all brought up with. So all of this fits into here we are in Pakistan, and what are we going to do about it? Well, it's nice to sign petitions and, stop them from torturing monkeys to death or whatever they're doing, or fracking or destroying the planet in one way or another. But all of those
don't you think
important negatives,
yes,
all of those important negatives are not a positive, really. I mean, in other words, the only possible underlying game-changing positive is if the philosophy changes, which is not something in your head, but it's an inner something, an inner conviction. As I said, to get back to it, for lack of a better word, it's an inner conviction that we're really here for a purpose, and it's our job to realize as best we can that purpose. And if we're not doing that, we're not going to have a civilization.
I don't you feel that we are closer now than ever before to realizing a global consciousness, and that we're here for another reason, and it's just not about the biggest house and the best jewelry and the best job and the most money and the biggest paycheck, and that we're now starting to mature as a race, as earthlings, and that we're closer to that now, realizing that not only Egypt but other ancient civilizations were onto something, and they knew about the conscious, and they knew about the soul. And
yes,
and that did. Yeah, and today we're closer to realizing those values more so than ever in the past.
Well, no, I wouldn't say more so than ever in the past, because
I mean, the last. Let's just go with the last 100 years since.
Oh, the last 100 years, yeah, because that's the beginning of the end.
That's the beginning of the end, right?
Since, let's say, the so-called Enlightenment, which is enlightenment only in the sense that you needed electricity for illumination.
Right. Right.
Otherwise, yes, more so than, let's say, in Victor Hugo's time, or yes, it's there. But on the other hand, in many ways, it's much worse. It's now, you could really talk about progress. I mean, when I grew up, I'm a lot older than you, everybody took progress for granted. And mostly they still do. You read any mainstream newspaper or anything, and these morons are talking about America as a developed country. It's not developed; it's despoiled. It's in practically all ways. Yeah, we have good bathrooms and all the rest of it, but it is Dumbfuckistan. Look at what's going on now.
Yeah.
How can
It's
you
so
call
true.
that an improvement in anything?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I just think that because something strange has happened, and it's called the internet, and now we have a smartphone that now you have every book, every library, everything collectively in the world now is right there at your fingertips. You have information instantly. So if I'm sitting around and I see Charlton Heston on TV and I go, man, what was that movie he was in 1970, right? Yeah. I would have to, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I would have to go down to the library. I would. Right. There was no other, unless you had some kind of encyclopedia set lying around the house, you had to literally go to the library to look up information. Now you can sit around and do this at your fingertips. And that's also right. Because of that, we are able to study ancient history now. We have access to videos and documentaries and reading, and all of this information is out there. And I think that's what I'm getting at, John, is that now today we can go back and look at those ancient civilizations that didn't have the distractions of the Kardashians, that didn't have the distractions of television.
Good image. That's right.
Right. And all they had back then, 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, was the study of the mind, was the study of consciousness, was the study of what made us better. And that's what we did. We haven't been doing that for a long time. And I think now, because of the internet and the sharing of information, shows like this, that we now know that there is something else out there that is bigger than us.
Well, this is true.
I have hope.
The idea whose time has not yet gone is the second strongest thing in the world. And the fact that the Kardashians are the Kardashians is a pretty sobering thought. Winston Churchill once said, he said two conflicting things, and I'm not a great Churchillian fan, but he said, the best argument against democracy is 10 minutes of conversation with the average voter. He also said that when you look at democracy, it seems like the worst system that in the world until you look at all the others. This is only true in the 1930s or so. It doesn't apply to ancient Egypt, about which Churchill knew nothing. But nevertheless, no, the counter argument to what you're saying is all of television.
Yes.
The counter argument is who's running for president. This sort of super oaf on the one hand and Draculette on the other.
Right.
You got a vampire versus a Frankenstein monster. That's one of these horrible people is going to be the president of the country. It might wake some people up, maybe, but I don't know.
Well, and this is where we do learn from ancient Egypt and Mene and the very basic principles that went down in 3000 BC. Order out of chaos, right?
Well, this is true.
Yeah, because we're about to hit some chaos.
Yes, and in fact, it's an interesting concept because Schwaller was on to this. That if you look at botany, how a seed germinates when, let's say, an acorn, but it applies to all seeds. I mean, it has to be in the right place. Bible has this, the seed that fell on stony ground, and the one that fell by the wayside, and the other one that falls on fertile ground. But anyway, for the seed to sprout, it has to fall into fertile ground in the right place and get the right nourishment and all of that. And then the shell, talk about an acorn, same applies to any seed. The shell gradually, it dissolves. And there's a point at which it's just total chaos. It's a kind of a little mass of jelly. And out of that germinates this little seed that grows up and penetrates the earth and so on. And it's very vulnerable. It can be trampled into the ground by any wandering jackass. But that's how it grows. So in other words, out of chaos is necessary for new life. And it could be that we're at the stage of civilization now that represents somewhere or another that kind of chaos. You can't be sure. I mean, you can make an argument which stage we're at and so on. So when I'm taking your point, I'm not even disagreeing with you, except I'm thinking that the forces in opposition are stronger than maybe you think. I mean, I'd be happy if suddenly the Kardashians disappeared the day after tomorrow. Not that I have anything really against the Kardashians themselves, but that would be a sign that something sane was going on.
How, you know, John, I know I've asked you this before, and I think it was actually privately, but how do you think you got so smart? Because you have a combination that goes on with you. You have logic. You're definitely cynical, and I know that you say that, but you are too as well. I mean, you really are. And
I call it realism, but okay.
But how did you get here? I mean, was there something that happened somewhere in your life where you just took a right-hand turn and decided on this path? I mean, how did you get here with this?
I didn't really decide. It sort of it happened. I mean, I just couldn't have done anything else. I mean, I think maybe we didn't have this discussion. At the age of 13, I mean, I'm not the great genius. I'm a smart guy, but I'm not one of these. You know, you turn on nowadays with the internet. You talk about it every week. There's some 5-year-old kid standing on his head eating an ice cream cone, playing Beethoven's Violin Sonata or something like that. I wasn't one of those. But what I was I like to think I was psychologically precocious. And I knew at the age of 13 that I was born into a lunatic asylum and that the whole goddamn thing was crazy. And that never left me. And when I got a little bit older, not so much, 19 or so, I had my mission in front of me, my vision, which was I wanted to be the little boy who said the emperor has no clothes. And I didn't start out as a scholar at all. I started out as a creative writer and mostly a satirist. And I, a lot of things published and nothing ever made any money, and some plays done and so on that I would love to see revived. But one thing led to another, and certain epiphanies where, I was brought up in a household middle class, very unintellectual, which is sort of weird because, it's Jewish and very often the Jews are pretty literate, but my parents weren't. They were okay people. They just didn't know what to do with me. And there was no music in the house. To my parents, Rodgers and Hammerstein was classical music, but along the line, I got acquainted with classical music, and I remember very clearly. Somehow, one way or another, I got, even though I never studied music, studied it. It's one of my couple of regrets in this long life. And I suddenly somehow got a hold of the Beethoven late quartets, and that told me. It was an epiphany that everything wasn't crazy, or it hadn't always been crazy. And then I was in the army through no fault of my own, needless to say, in Germany, and went to visit Chartres Cathedral. And was I 20 or 21? And that was another epiphany. That was, this was whoever did this knew something that I really want to know. But even then, I didn't really pursue that particular line of things. When I started getting published, I went to Ibiza and met lots of relatively kindred spirits and got introduced by a friend to astrology, actually, first of all. I got interested in that, and one thing led to another, and suddenly I had a novel published and, a bunch of stuff published, but never made any money. And went to England with my then girlfriend who subsequently became my first wife, to get into, because in Ibiza I learned about the Gurdjieff work, and that was something I wanted to study, because one of the things that appealed to me about Gurdjieff, I don't know if you're familiar with him, are you?
Of course.
Yeah, well, not of course. Everybody isn't.
No. Well, me, I mean, and
the Kardashians have never heard of Gurdjieff.
No. And I meant to ask you about that earlier and his influence on your outlook on life. And, and then you ended up going
rooted in that. And one of the things that attracted me so much about Gurdjieff was that was that he was the first person I'd ever encountered, posthumously, unfortunately, but who was as contemptuous of all of Western civilization as I was. The difference was that he knew how to live in it, and I didn't. And so one of the reasons for joining the work was, and the recognition that however attractive the philosophy, it has to be practiced. Without the practice, it's like, well, you can love music and not be a musician. I love music and I'm not a musician. I'm really sorry that I don't understand it. I mean, except emotionally, but I don't really know what I'm listening to. My composer stepson, guides me along when I say, well, what's this about? What, and so on. Anyway, one thing led to another, and suddenly I was writing a book called The Case for Astrology, which is an argument that put the evidence together that says there's something to it. And that led me by another series of strange coincidences, seeming coincidences. But when you're on a path, I mean, I had that path. I had it from an early age, really from age 20 or so, with certain, lots of roadblocks and challenges. And still, even now to this day, I still don't, still practically broke. I don't make any money. But I'm still here, so what the hell? And so one thing led to another, and if you work at something and you start at age 20 and you're serious about it and you don't get distracted, you don't have to be a great transcendental genius to learn stuff. So really, so at the end of 65 years of mostly hard work. I mean, lots of partying and plenty of depressions and stuff, but mostly I've been following this single vision of living within a lunatic asylum and understanding that there were ways to live within it without being destroyed by it, and that those ways were, let's say, communicable in one way, shape, or form, and everything that I do is directed toward, sometimes not even consciously. I mean, I just do it.
Hey, John, we're at the end of the show. Okay. I wanted you to complete that thought. To stop. Yeah, and stay with me, because we're so close to the end. I have to actually just run the closing music and credits, but you're going to write it out with me. You came this far, you're going to stay till the end. All right? That's it. You don't have a choice. I just got to thank John Anthony West one more time for coming on tonight. Amazing conversation. We skip commercials because Jaws is the man. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar, Fady by Dale, Webmaster Drew the Geek, Music Doug Aldrich, Intro Spaceboy, SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication, KGRA The Planet. All right, Jaws, say good night to everybody.
Well, good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
On for that.
There you go. John Anthony West. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. Cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. For John Anthony West, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.